42-42. We got
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Welcome in another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Murray. We're here at the D in downtown Las Vegas, and we're going 3 wide today because Wednesdays with Wes we had to postpone because it was Christmas Day. So we postponed that. Matt Humans, Wes Reynolds, I'm Tim Murray. Gentlemen, quarterfinals are near. We got bowl games aplenty, and I'm just happy, Wes, that you have made it back in one piece from South Bend, Indiana. Those rosy cheeks Kirk Cignetti had post-game, not seeing those on your face right now.
Yeah, I should have known there was an omen at our Alumni Association tailgate before the game. They were handing out these white towels, which will duplicate as a white flag that Indiana laid in the fourth quarter as they punted down 20-3, but great experience except for the result. I mean, you know, you're there in the college football playoff for a big game at Notre Dame Stadium. Couldn't beat it. Everybody was so gracious, by the way, to the Hoosier fans. Yeah. By the way, no trash talking at all. But Notre Dame moves on. They were the better team, and Indiana, hell of a season, best in program history. But now we're on to the quarterfinals of the college football playoff.
You know, one thing I'll say about the playoff is I heard a lot of complaining from national media, social media morons last week after the first 4 games. Expectations for these games were unreasonable. Mm-hmm. Right? Every game is not going to be an instant classic in the first round. And you know what? If you look at the NFL playoffs over the years, if you have 4 games on a weekend, you might have 3 blowouts and 1 really good game. These 4 first-round college football playoff games were played on some of the strongest home fields there are. Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State. Are you stunned? The 4 favorites laying 7 or more? 1 easily? No, you shouldn't be. Now is when you're going to get on neutral fields, and I think you're going to see some better games when you get to the Elite Eight. But the playoff needs to have teams like Indiana and SMU. Maybe we don't need Tennessee. Right?
Did Lane Kiffin tweet out after Tennessee got their ass kicked? That's interesting. I must have missed that.
It was all Indiana, like Ichabod Crane, Paul Feinbaum.
Well, SMU too.
And Herb Street, like, oh, Indiana. And maybe it was because Indiana was a standalone game, but I felt like Indiana got most of the scrutiny and that Tennessee and Clemson and these other teams got a little bit of a pass.
Well, the Hoosiers got picked on a little bit too much by some of the airhead critics. And let's face it, Indiana deserved to be in the playoff. I'm not sure SMU did. I'm not sure Tennessee did after watching the weekend. I'm disappointed in the way Kurt Cignetti coached like a coward with a couple of those punts, including one at the 36-yard line. But Indiana deserved to be in the playoff. I want to know after the weekend how many people were saying, hey, did Tennessee deserve to be in there?
No one.
Right.
I thought Tennessee had the worst performance of the first round.
And it was
didn't even show up.
And it was so funny that Kirk Herbstreit was like, well, Tennessee just didn't have their best game, didn't play well. Not like Indiana sucked and they shouldn't have been in the playoff, you know. So, you know, different strokes for different folks, I guess. But, you know, it's amazing, too, that they hype this college football playoff. And it's like nobody hates college football, I guess, more than the people that broadcast college football. Because when you have Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, NFL announcers on Monday Night Football, like, you know what, these teams had great seasons, and they should be celebrated, and, you know, we're kind of taking up for the downtrodden over the weekend.
The other thing I'll say is, and it's been said many times, I love the 12-team playoff. It's only going to get better. But you cannot have teams like Boise and Arizona State with byes.
That's got to change.
That's got to change, and it's got to change immediately.
I think tinkering with how the format is fine. I think 12 teams is perfect. I love, and you were there, I love the fact that these games are on campus. The build-up to Friday's game, just from a television standpoint, was unbelievable with College Game Day there. You know, Signetti doing his thing, sounded like an absolute dope on College Game Day. But, like, the player walk happened live during College Game Day. It was pretty impressive to see all of that. But that all being said, those are in the past, and we now look ahead. So let's get to the biggest games of the upcoming week. We call that the main course around here.
The main course.
All right, let's go into it. We'll do it chronologically, gentlemen, and we'll start on New Year's Eve. 7:30 Eastern, this game will be on ESPN. It is Boise State, who is right now the 3 seed, taking on Penn State, who looked impressive in their win over SMU. Right now, as we look at the board, as we record this on the 26th, it is 10.5s, 11s out there, total sitting at 53. Interesting to note, Boise State, not that it matters for this particular team, but this program has a lot of history at the Fiesta Bowl. A lot of people remember the Statue of Liberty against Oklahoma. Also, 10 years to the day, Boise State beat Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl down there in Glendale as well. So, Matt, I'll start with you. Boise State catching 11 if you like the dog, 10.5 if you like the favorite.
I like the dog, and this number got up to 12 at Circus Sports. And when you hear people talk about Boise, you would think this is a Sean, quit talking in my ear. All right, so you would think this is a one-trick pony team. Maddox Madsen is a capable quarterback, and I think a lot of people ignore that. Madsen's got 22 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions on the season, and he's also a guy who completes 62%. It's not just Ashton Genty and the rest of the Broncos. I think Boise's got a really solid defense, a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over, and just happens to have the best running back in college football. But the other positive aspects of this Boise State team get overlooked a lot because of all the hype around Ashton Genty. I believe that Boise can show up here in Tempe and give Penn State a game. I know some of the numbers handicappers I've heard talk about this game this week say, I made Penn State 13 or I made it 14. I actually made Penn State 8 in this game, and I might still take Boise State at 8, but I'm going to take the 11 that's out there now because I think the Broncos could pull the upset in this game. Again, I think some of these favorites are being a little bit overvalued moving into the second round because they just won in blowouts on their home field. Now when you move to neutral sites, it gets a little bit tougher to lay these type of numbers, Wes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I make it 10, so not much of a variation with the current number, but what I played over 52, would still play it at the current number at 53. Both these teams pretty solid against the run, especially Penn State only allowing just over 100 yards, but Ashton Genty, you know, we've talked about it that maybe toward the end of the season he was wearing down a little bit, a lot of wear and tear because they were trying to go for that all-time rushing record, but now he's had 3 weeks to recuperate and get back kind of into the swing of things here. So I like the over in this spot. Penn State on an indoor track, you know, couldn't quite keep up with Oregon, but never really got blown out. So they were able to generate some explosive plays there in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium in the Big Ten title game. Think they could do the same here. And what you said about Maddox Madsen is true. I don't think this is going to be like the Kevin Jennings situation at SMU where he kind of got overwhelmed in that true road game, the whiteout there at Beaver Stadium through those early 2 pick-sixes. I think this kid's a little bit more experienced and that they're going to be able to make plays down the field. So the spread, I'm right at it. The number 10.5, just kind of right in between. So I played the over in this one, Penn State, Boise State.
Yeah, SMU, no shot, throwing 2 pick-sixes early on. The first couple of scores from Penn State coming courtesy of defensive touchdowns in that one. So I echo what you said regarding Penn State's offense in Oregon. Didn't really have to see a ton in that home game against SMU as they won by 4 touchdowns. All right, let's get to New Year's Day, fellas. Let's go to the Peach Bowl. It is Texas taking on Arizona State. The look-ahead number was 11.5. It is now 13.5. Touch 14. You start to see a little bit of buyback here on Arizona State. So the Sun Devils, who of course will be without their top wide receiver, Jordan Tyson. They did not have him in the Big 12 championship game. That did not matter as they got the win with relative ease against Iowa State there. So Arizona State catching 13.5 against Texas, who went out and won. Score maybe a little misleading. Clemson pretty competitive in that game. Ultimately, Clemson wins and covers. Wes, I'll start with you on this one. Texas, Arizona State, anything of interest for you in this one?
Have not bet anything as of yet. Look, I had Texas against Clemson, and that ended up being a sweat for them to cover the number because Clemson, of course, goes up 7-0, and then Texas basically dominates the rest of the first half and ran the ball very well. Quinn Ewers actually started really hot, 8 of 8, and then kind of cooled off as the game went along. But Texas never quite put Clemson away, and that's, I think, the concern if you're laying almost 2 touchdowns here with the Longhorns. Look, I picked them to win the national championship. I have a bet on them to reach the semifinals, so I think that they're going to win the game because I don't know how much that Scatabo, how much is he going to be able to get on the ground against this Texas defense, which is one of the best run defenses in America. They totally shut down Clemson. Clemson, though, was able to throw the ball on him, but Texas, I believe, number 8 in yards per rush, 3.1, number 9 in the nation, 104.5 a game on the ground as a team. So I don't know how much Scatabo is going to be able to get on the ground. He'll probably get his fair share, but certainly below his average. So nothing I bet as of yet.
We talked a lot about Texas like it had a dominant defense before the game against Clemson, and Tigers actually put up 412 yards and were surprisingly effective, I thought, moving up and down the field in that game in Austin. What you hear when Texas plays, it seems like now, is nothing but Texas opinions every week. Everybody's on Texas. Betting market moves in the favor of Texas. I understood it last week against Clemson. I thought that was a game that the Longhorns likely would win by a blowout. I didn't lay the number. It turned into a sweat. I don't fully believe in Sark and in Quinn Ewers. I don't know why the Arch Manning package is not getting used more. Maybe it'll get used more in this game. I'm not into laying these big numbers with Texas like a lot of people are. I took Georgia in the SEC championship game. And with Gunnar Stockton forced into emergency duty, Georgia still wins that game. That's one that Texas should have won. When you get Carson Beck knocked out and a backup quarterback put in, and the Longhorns couldn't find a way to win that game. I'm not as big a believer as most in the Longhorns. And hey, when you look at Arizona State, sure, I wish that Jordan Tyson was in there. That would put me on the Sun Devils for sure. Cam Scatabo is going to be effective. Even when you know it's going to be Scatabo, you can't stop it sometimes, right, Tim? That fraudulent Iowa State team in the Big 12 championship could not stop Sam Levitt and Cam Scatabo. I'm leaning Arizona State, but I have not bet it yet.
That 3-3-5 defensive front for Iowa State was not ready for Cam Scatabo. I bet Texas early on wrote it up for the guide at 11.5. Still would lean that way. Let's get it to the big ones. Rose Bowl and Sugar Bowl on the other side as the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
We keep it rolling here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Just a reminder, you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. Please rate, review, and subscribe as we will continue to pump these out all throughout the playoff season. So 2 playoff games in the books, a couple of best bets. Let's get to the main events of the quarterfinals, the 2 games with the closest point spreads, and we'll start at the Rose Bowl. I know these 2 teams are now conference foes, but this is the ideal Rose Bowl situation. The Pac-12 team, now a member of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten team, Ohio State and Oregon. We talked about it briefly, fellas. We have Oregon, the number 1 seed, catching 2.5 against Ohio State. The look-ahead line was Ohio State plus 1.5. Now it's 2.5. Impressive performance, needless to say, from Ohio State, a side that I ultimately was able to jump in on, has kind of faded that trendy dog. The overhit team total under for Tennessee. Matt, I'll start with you in this one. We saw this game happen already. Happened up in Eugene, a game that I believe you took the points with Oregon as a home dog. They win that game outright with a crazy finish. How do you look at this game in Pasadena on New Year's Day, 5 o'clock Eastern on ESPN?
Oh, many different ways to look at this game, but you're right. First time around, I took the 3.5 with Oregon. I thought it was absurd that the Ducks were getting more than a field goal in their home field against Ohio State. But also, you look back at the Buckeyes season, I thought that was one of their best performances. In a loss on the road, a 32-31 loss, where if Will Howard, the Buckeyes had managed the clock right, they would have had a field goal attempt to win the game at the end. So I did think they played pretty well in that game. I didn't see Ohio State really play at a high level again until late in the season, I thought, against Indiana, but also had a couple special teams plays that went against Indiana in that game, and then against Tennessee. Maybe the Buckeyes got their swagger back. Maybe they got right again. They're going to play loose. They were tied against Michigan. Chip Kelly and Ryan Day screwed up the play calling in the Michigan game, running between the guards 19 times for 18 yards and not getting the ball out on the perimeter to Jeremiah Smith and your playmakers. Well, Ohio State's offense did what it does best against Tennessee. Got the ball in the hands of the playmakers, called plays the right way. Maybe Chip Kelly and Ryan Day are back on track here. I think Ohio State's dangerous. You know, this is when you're coming off a total disaster like the Buckeyes did against Michigan, sometimes it can be a good thing for you, right? And that turned into a really good thing against Tennessee. Buckeyes came out firing. Vols didn't show up. And now I think Ohio State's got confidence and swagger. But I'm still going to go with the Ducks here. I'm going to wait and see if a 3 will show up at some point. I think Oregon's got the most reliable quarterback in the playoffs, and Dylan Gabriel. Might have the best coach in Dan Lanning. Little extra prep time could help, even though I think Ohio State getting a win last week. Sometimes you want to be in rhythm. You don't want too much time off, so that's a tricky way to handicap that. But also the West Coast location advantage, I think, plays into Oregon's favor a little bit. So I'm going to look for 3 on the Ducks. If I don't get it, I'll probably split a little 2.5 and some on the money line. But Oregon was my pick to win this whole thing before the playoffs. I'm not going to back off of it now because Ohio State blew out a Tennessee team that looked like it didn't deserve to be in the playoff.
At the risk of being Mr. Obvious here, and you've already seen a little bit of movement on it, I can't go anything but the over on the total.
Yeah.
When you consider the fact that these 2 teams, I think, combined for a little less than 970 yards in the first game. It was 467 for the Buckeyes, 496 for Oregon, despite what Matt said about running between the tackles where it wasn't all that effective for the Buckeyes. Still put up 467. Get the ball on the perimeter to Smith and Egbuka. That's what you have to do here, and you can do that. Oregon can be had a little bit with the pass defense. And then defensively, though, they're going to have to set a tone because they really did not. They didn't get any pressure on Dylan Gabriel. He had a clean pocket the whole time in Autzen in the first meeting.
He was able to run a little bit, too, in that game, too.
Absolutely. And, that was, I thought, the key for Ohio State. Beside the early score against Tennessee, when Cody Simon hit Nico, very, very hard early in the game, and that set a physical tone, and you could tell that Tennessee was absolutely done 7 minutes into that game. So, I can't see this being some 2017 game. I think that this is probably going to be a high-scoring game again. You're missing a little bit of the best number because 53, I believe, was the opener. But I would still play this. 56 might be a bridge too far, I think. But I still think you got to look at the over here between these two teams.
Yeah, I think, Matt, before you jump in, I think you look at the way Oregon played that Big Ten championship game, how Ohio State's offense seemed to maybe re-find itself. I would agree with that sentiment. 32-31, of course, the score in Autzen, Matt.
The play calling by Chip Kelly and Ryan Day in the Michigan-Ohio State game was an abomination, let's put it that way. And I think the Buckeyes did get back on track. They know what they do best, and that's going to make them dangerous in this game in Pasadena. I agree with what Wes said. On Christmas Day here, Wes and I were both hosting shows at VSiN. And we had Brad Powers on our show last night. Brad said, same thing Wes said, may look obvious, but I like this over the total of 55. And sometimes the obvious plays are the ones you got to make. And I agree. I think the only way I could play this is over 55. Think about it. If you had a 27-24 type of game between Oregon and Ohio State, you'd be really, really surprised, right? It'd feel like a low-scoring game. And that's 51 points. That almost gets you there. I think you got to play this over 55, too.
Yeah, and we'll see how this number continues to trend up. If we have a low-scoring game in the Sugar Bowl, to be honest, I wouldn't be all that surprised. Total sits at 44. Spread anywhere from 1 to 2 between Notre Dame and Georgia. Wes, you just saw the Irish up close and personal. Worth noting for this game, the obvious injury, which is Carson Beck done for the rest of the year, will be Gunnar Stockton, who we saw in the SEC Championship. But also worth noting, Notre Dame will be down another defensive captain. They already lost Benjamin Morrison, their top pro prospect, one of their corners, to a hip injury for the remainder of the season a couple weeks back. And now Riley Mills, who was wreaking havoc against Indiana, he is out for the remainder of the CFP. So, Wes, I'll start with you. You saw him up close and personal. Notre Dame, Georgia, total 44. Notre Dame now a slight dog. Opened up at DraftKings 2.5 in some of those look-ahead numbers. What do you make of this one?
And Notre Dame is very good, and I came away very impressed. So all these people are like, oh, well, Ole Miss or South Carolina or Alabama would have done better. No, I don't think so. Since we like to deal in hypotheticals, especially down in SEC country, I think hypothetically all three of those teams would, all three of those teams hypothetically would have got their ass beat in South Bend last Friday.
You know what? Maybe one of those or two of those teams would have done a little better. Who knows?
Right.
But I still think people need to pick on Tennessee's performance or SMU's performance instead of focusing on Indiana. Indiana was at a tough spot in that Friday night game. And Notre Dame, I didn't think played all that poorly. I thought SMU and Tennessee were the worst teams of the weekend.
I did too, but Notre Dame, look, they can make you look bad because they don't really make a lot of mistakes except for that early interception by Riley Leonard. And I give credit to Marcus Freeman. After they lost to Northern Illinois, everybody kind of wrote him off, and he's kept them focused. And I know the schedule may have been a little bit permissible down the stretch with a couple of those teams being a little bit down from the usual standards, but he's kept this team focused, and they run the ball very well. 98-yard rip-off by Jeremiah Love. I want to say the Indiana run defense was good. Yeah, after they gave up a 98-yard touchdown, it was pretty solid. But the guy that really killed Indiana, too, I think was Jordan Faison, who's not really a game-breaking receiver, but he's a guy that moves the chains. Notre Dame, I don't think, really has that receiver.
No, they don't.
That's that speedster. That's that X-wide receiver that they can go to all the time. And, maybe that's going to be a little bit of an issue with Georgia. One thing I will say for Georgia, Carson Beck, I know it just got announced that he was out, but I think Georgia knew for a couple weeks that he was out. So they've had, well over 2 weeks to have Gunnar Stockton prepare. It's going to be a lot more RPO, you would think, offensively. And I just think Georgia, even though they're down from their usual standards, the dude upgrade from Indiana to Georgia is going to be very substantial, especially in the trenches. So have not bet this, but I'm leaning that small money line. I think Georgia is like -1 here at Circa.
Yeah, before the playoff, obviously I bet Notre Dame at 12-1, 10-1 to win the whole thing. And I thought that the Irish, if they get by Indiana, we're going to face a Georgia team that kind of limps in with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, and it's not a bad draw for Notre Dame. I'll say this, Tim, and you and I were talking about last week. Notre Dame's going to play much better offensively if it's going to be Georgia in this game. I was not impressed by the way the Irish played. The 98-yard run by Jeremiah Love was great, but you're not going to get a 90-yard touchdown run against Georgia, and you're probably not going to get a whole lot of explosive plays against that Georgia defense. So Notre Dame's going to have to grind this one out on the ground. I think a low-scoring game. I'm going to go under the total of 44. I'm less confident in the Fighting Irish than I was, let's say, a week ago. It's going to be tough to beat Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs here in this spot. You've had 3 weeks to get Gunnar Stockton prepared for this game, so he's not going to look like a complete clown out there. I actually think the Irish have a decent shot to win it, but to me, it's like a coin flip type of game, and I'm gonna say under the total of 44 is a little bit better bet. I think this game's going to be won and waged, a battle mostly on the ground. It's going to be an ugly, kind of like the SEC championship game was.
22-19.
Yeah, between Texas and Georgia. So I think under is going to be my play here.
I'll give you my best bet on the Sugar Bowl on the other side of the break, and then we'll start diving into a whole host of bowl games on the 27th, 28th, 30th, and 31st. It's the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Happy holidays. It is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Busy bowl season. 5 games on Friday, the 27th. 8 bowl games on the 28th. But before we jump into that, we've got an underplay from Matt. I know a little bit of a lean from you. I'm in on Georgia. I know the Notre Dame fan, maybe it's the happiness hedge coming in out on me, but I think the Riley Mills injury is a bridge too far for the Irish. When you look at this defense, which is one of the best defenses in the country, no Riley Mills up front, Jordan Botelho and Boubacar Traore, 2 edge rushers that have been having solid seasons. Both got hurt earlier in the year. And then Benjamin Morrison, as I mentioned, he's been out for a while. Now, Leonard Moore, the freshman, has stepped in and played well at times. Christian Gray, remember, he got picked on a bunch in that USC game. They still have Xavier Watts in the secondary, a consensus All-American. But for me, guys, I think when you've got ample time for Georgia to prepare, and it was interesting, Pete Sampson, who covers Notre Dame for The Athletic, mentioned this on a podcast where he said he had heard that the Georgia coaches leading up to the Indiana game stopped watching tape on Indiana and said, no, it's going to be Notre Dame. So they've been focusing a little extra on Notre Dame.
That's
so
nice to hear.
Take that for what you will. I just think that Georgia, I don't think this is going to be a blowout. This isn't 2020 Notre Dame Bama or 2018 Notre Dame Clemson. I just think Georgia's a slightly better team. I've got my concerns about the Irish offense. Not opposed to the underplay, but for me, cheap money line or lay the 1 at Circa. I found $1.20 here in town. I like Georgia to win this game against Notre Dame.
It's a real stunner to me, Wes, that Notre Dame fan Tim is skeptical about his team going into the playoff game. I'm really shocked to show up to.
However,
Tim
check
is the most optimistic
check
guy
the tape. I don't think I've ever, on this, at least this year, I have not bet against Notre Dame. I just am very pessimistic about it.
You'll pass and you're pessimistic. I'll say this. You have a reason to be pessimistic. Notre Dame has not won a major bowl game since beating Texas A&M in the 1994 Cotton Bowl.
The Indiana game's that's a bowl win. I'm taking it. I am taking it. That is a bowl win. Ari Wasserman put out a tweet and said,
is this a major bowl? It's a playoff game.
It's not like counting an NCAA tournament win when it's in Dayton.
That's not Dayton. A 7-10 is not Dayton.
I know it's not. I'm with you, Tim.
Would that have been Indiana's first bowl win since 1990 or whatever it was?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If you play it on your home field, it doesn't count as a major
we're
bowl
moving
win.
the goalposts here, man.
1994, Wes Reynolds was walking across the campus in Bloomington. That's how long it's been, right? You were probably in college.
I was a high school senior on my visit, yes.
That's the last time Notre Dame won a major bowl game. That's 10 consecutive losses in major bowls. That's why Tim is so pessimistic.
I don't like your negativity here. Stop bringing up those types
Always
of things.
with the negative waves, Moriarty, like in Kelly's Heroes.
All right.
I reminded Super Dave Ross of this a couple days ago. I said Notre Dame's drought in major bowls is kind of like the Dallas Cowboys, who haven't been to the NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl since 1996, right?
That's like a knife through Dave Ross's heart, man.
Yeah, I mean, Dave pretends to be a Virginia Tech fan, then they suck, so then he jumps on the Syracuse bandwagon. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what Dave Ross is?
VCU once we get to
VCU college basketball. He's a Marine, so I guess Navy when they beat Army too. All right, enough crapping on Dave Ross. We love you, Dave. All right, let's get to it. We got a whole bunch of bowl games, and we like to call these types of matchups ones that tingle the tongue a little bit. Let's hit on them.
Muy caliente. Spicy matchups.
Let's go into some spicy matchups. As mentioned, 5 bowl games on December 27th. Speaking of the young men and women who will serve this country, Oklahoma versus Navy, the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl, noon Eastern on ESPN. These two teams have met once before. 1965, when Matt Humans was in elementary school somewhere running around and terrorizing people's lives, I'm sure.
I was not born yet, Tim, but that's a funny line you came up with there.
All right, let's get into it, though. Oklahoma and Navy, no one gives a crap of what number I got, but I did once I started to see a lot of movement here. Took a little 7.5 with Navy. Now it's down to 2.5, total 43.5. This game will be played on TCU's home field. Matt, Oklahoma, Brent Venables let the media know, I believe we'll have 56 scholarship players available for this game.
That's okay. You only need about 30 to win, so 56 is going to be plenty. And, hey, Oklahoma was a 10-point favorite at the opener here at Circa. I understand why it dropped all the way to 2.5. I hadn't bet it yet, but I had it on my list as a play, so I'm going to play Oklahoma here, probably late 2.5 for the cheap money line price. Michael Hawkins is going to be the quarterback. He's got some experience. You know, you look at the list of all the opt-outs or transfers for the Sooners, and Jackson Arnold's on the list. Who cares? Jackson Arnold was not going to play in this game. He's off to Auburn. Hawkins is a quarterback who's going to take this game seriously. And still, Oklahoma's got more speed, more team speed, more athletes than Navy. And I also think that Navy's coming off a game. It's Super Bowl, right? That was the game that meant the most. And I actually think even the bowl game, when you're talking about the Armed Forces Bowl, bit of a letdown for Navy coming off the big win against Army. So I'm going to go with the team with better athletes, better speed, quarterback Michael Hawkins, who's got some experience. And I think this price is cheap on Oklahoma. Brent Venables is a great defensive coach, too. And Venables has seen the option before. I think he's going to have a game plan set up here to control the Navy offense.
Yeah, at this number, I don't think you can bet Navy at all. It would be Oklahoma or pass. You mentioned about the 56 scholarships. I believe 24 of those guys are freshmen for Oklahoma, who probably hadn't seen a lot of action. So young on the offensive line. However, Navy, if you look at the defensive line, what is their nose tackle like? 265 pounds, very small on the defensive line. And Oklahoma, even if they're young and inexperienced, they got big boys up there on the offensive line. These are SEC recruits, so big size disparity. It would be Oklahoma or pass at this current number.
All right, let's go 3:30 Eastern, ESPN, Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt. The under god, that is Diego Pavia. If you go back to November 26th of 2022 when New Mexico State beat Liberty as a 24-point underdog, Diego Pavia 14-4-1 ATS as an underdog. I know a lot of people are saying this, and I agree. These were two bet-on teams in the bowl season. Unfortunately, they're going to be playing each other in the Birmingham Bowl. I'm going to take the 3 here with Vanderbilt. Not a lot of opt-outs to note on really either side. Georgia Tech will be missing one of their top wide receivers, Eric Singleton, has moved on to Auburn. Georgia Tech's left tackle is opted out of this game, or is hit the transfer portal, I should say. But I'm going to take Vanderbilt. Both these teams I expect to be very motivated, but give me the points in this spot. Honestly, whoever was the dog, Wes, I'd probably looking at the dog in this one.
Yeah, same here on the dog for me. One more time with go Diego
Even
Pavia.
though, according to the injunction, he may be back next year, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So this may not be the last chance to bet him as an underdog, but I'm going to take another opportunity to do so. Also like the under a little bit here too. You got two slower tempo teams. Like these two teams are almost like service academies without being service academies. They run the clock, a lot of RPO stuff. Quarterbacks both run a lot. Not only Diego, but Haynes King, who is apparently going to play in this bowl for Georgia Tech. So I think with slow tempo, both left tackles, by the way, out and have signed at other programs for this team. So, a little bit difficulty to pass with backup left tackles on both sides here. So dog and under for me.
Yeah, I lean dog, and I might end up playing Vandy here, but like you said, it might not be Diego Pavia's final game for the Commodores. I think these are two play-on type of teams going into the bowl season. So I'm not thrilled about the matchup. I do lean Vandy +3.
Liberty Bowl, 7 o'clock Eastern on the 27th on ESPN, the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. This one has been interesting to look at from the point spread standpoint. Opened Arkansas as the favorite, went to Texas Tech, went back to Arkansas. Right now, 1.5 in favor of Texas Tech. A whole lot of pieces are out for Arkansas. 3 starters on their offensive line, a wide receiver, a safety. So a lot of moving pieces on both sides. Micah Hudson, highly touted kid. He is signed with Texas A&M from the Texas Tech side of things. So a lot of moving parts here in this game, Wes. Texas Tech now a 1.5-point favorite.
Yeah, and the moving parts, we'll start with Texas Tech. 2 new coordinators, by the way. Zach Kitley now going to be the head coach at FAU. Tim DeRuyter got let go, the defensive coordinator. So I feel like maybe a little bit less attrition for Texas Tech, despite the fact that Byron Morton is going to get his offseason surgery. So you got that freshman in at quarterback, Hammond, who certainly, I think, wants to, earn the job. And he played a little bit, too, so he's capable. Arkansas, they have, I believe, 6 scholarship offensive linemen left. Like, they have had a ton of transfers, and they've already signed at a lot of other programs. So, a couple new starters up there. I understand the move to Texas Tech. What I might be doing is coming back, though, on the total here. I think it was the right move with all this attrition to go with the under here when it was at like 60, but now over 51.5, over 52. Probably some guys working middles here, I think, on this total. And look, with a lot of unknowns, I would lean toward points here, so I would lean toward the over, but no bet for me on the side.
Yeah, believe it or not, Circa was as high as 61.5 on the total in this game, and it was down to 51.5 at some spots today, so you got a 10-point move. I did see Las Vegas Pro Bettor Steve Fezzik tweeted out today that the Blue Horseshoe loves over 51.5 in this game. So there you go. That's Fezzik's play on the game, over the total.
And working middles, because then you
Obviously,
know the under. Yep.
No question about it. Yeah.
We are going to try to run through as many games on Saturday. We still got 2 more games to hit on Friday the 27th. Stick around. It is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
We keep it rolling here. It is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast, working our way through our best bets from the bowl season. We've been doing these podcasts and writing up games for quite some time now. So as always, become a VSiN Pro subscriber, and you get all of our best bets as soon as we make them, including all our picks on vsin.com/picks, as well as the emails that you get from Bill 80. And if you were watching VSiN Primetime a couple weeks ago when we started to see the massive opt-outs come in from Washington State, that was when I finally said, you know what, at 13.5, give me Syracuse. I will lay the 13.5 in the Holiday Bowl on Friday the 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. It is now up to 17.5 at some spots. There is a 17 out there at time of record. It is pretty wild, Matt, when you look at who is going to be out for Washington State in this game. I almost felt like there would be a Marshall situation here when you don't have your head coach, your OC, your DC, your quarterback's coach, your quarterback, your running back, your wide wide receiver. The list is endless for Washington State, and there's almost no opt-outs for Syracuse. So I laid 13.5 at 17. Do I want to lay 17? Not really, but I would still lay it instead of take it. There is really not many numbers out there that I would look to back Washington State.
Yeah, if you look on the screen now, Circa is a 17.5. Westgate Superbook is 18. I was a little slow to get to this game. I laid 16.5, and I don't typically bet big favorites, but this looks like it's going to be a 40-point blowout for Syracuse. I was not even sure Washington State would field a team for this game, and I thought the Cougars might back out of the Holiday Bowl. Jake Dickert, the head coach, left. His OC and DC left as well. 10 starters gone. Your quarterback, John Mateer, has moved on to Oklahoma, and your top running back, Wayshawn Parker's gone as well. And like you said, Fran Brown, the Syracuse coach, said, we don't opt out around here. So Syracuse basically expected to have almost everyone on the field for this game. Wes, it reminds me a lot of when Jeff Brom left Purdue a couple years ago and went to Louisville. Yeah. And 25 Purdue players missed the game, including like 9 of their 10 best players. And the quarterback, everyone was sitting out. They basically fielded their C or D team and got beat by 55 points by LSU. I'm not sure how Washington State can compete here.
And remember last year, Syracuse got beat 45-0 in their bowl game by South Florida in the Boca Raton Bowl.
That's correct.
They were lining up that tight end like in the Wildcat formation, playing quarterback for Syracuse. So Fran Brown's going to take this seriously. I'm not going to bet it when it's moved 11 points, but I certainly don't want any part of Washington State.
All right, let's get to the Vegas Bowl, 10:30 Eastern. A stormy game. She'll be on the sidelines here for the SNRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. USC taking on Gig'em Aggie right now as we take a look at this game. USC out to around a 4-point underdog against Texas A&M. Total 52, Wes.
Yeah, USC for me, +4. Not a really strong play. Would lean a little bit over here. Remember, everybody bet against USC in the Holiday Bowl last year. When Caleb Williams is gone, then Miller Moss set the Holiday Bowl record. So I think they'll be okay at quarterback. Now at the running backs, Woody Marks is not going to play. He's opting out. And then Quentin Joyner transferred. But I think they got plenty of depth there, at least at running back. So went with USC here against the Aggies. Been in this situation before, so going to have some familiarity with a lot of portal guys.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I would like to get on the USC side, but I keep having nightmares of Jaden Maeva throwing 2 100-yard pick sixes against Notre Dame at the end of the game at the Coliseum. Trojans going to be without, like Wes said, Woody Marks, running back, but also your top 3 wide receivers and offensive tackle Mason Murphy. So definitely a stripped-down USC offense here. 3 defensive line starters out for the Aggies. Nick Scorton, one of those, is going to be out. So I can see why A&M is a slight favorite here. And Wes hit on Miller Moss threw 6 touchdown passes in that Holiday Bowl last year against Louisville. How ironic is it that Miller Moss is now transferring to Louisville?
Very funny how things tend to work out in college football. I heard this nugget from Brad Powers the other day. December 28th, we'll have 8 bowl games. That day that you referenced earlier in the podcast, January 1st, 1994, when Notre Dame beat Texas A&M, and ironically, the team who won the national championship, who lost to Notre Dame earlier in the year, Florida State also played on that day. That was the last time we had 8 bowl games on one day. Until Saturday, 8 bowl games. So let's try to go through as many as possible before we get out of here. Fenway Bowl, UConn and UNC. I bet UConn early on in the process at 4.5. It is now 2.5 against UNC. I'll be honest, I like the number I got, Wes. I'm not in love with the bet. Yeah. What do you make of this one?
Might be worth a buy to 3 here. You certainly would think UConn is motivated playing in Boston, so near home. North Carolina, they don't have a coach until after this game. Bill Belichick, of course, takes over. So some kids still going in the portal. Some kids like, oh, we want to show the new coach here the operation. I know Bill Belichick will be at the game, and in Boston, he doesn't lose up there in Massachusetts very often. But I think UConn and Jim Mora Jr. are going to take this really seriously. So if you like the more motivated team, I think it's the Huskies.
Well, Belichick did lose his last game as Patriots lose to the Jets.
True.
Foxborough.
For the first time in like a million years, he lost to the Jets.
Bad boy mowers, Pinstripe Bowl, noon on ABC. Boston College at Nebraska. First bowl game for the Corn since December 30th, 2016.
Where's Danny Burke?
The Irish Bulldog.
Is Britton Hess flying out to this game?
Former VSiN host Danny Burke's been waiting his whole life for this Nebraska Bowl.
Boston College catching 4 against Nebraska. Wes, anything on this one?
BC small for me at +4. I know it's gotten steam the other way from some notable groups on Nebraska who has a hole in the portal, but for next year, not for this bowl game. Bill O'Brien, first season up there at BC. Think they're motivated to finish it out, and I think a Boston team would love to win in the stadium.
I think for timing purposes, we're going to skip over the New Mexico Bowl, Louisiana against TCU.
Woolridge, by the way, the quarterback is playing. He's missed 7 weeks for ULL.
All right, there you go. Catching 11.5 are the Ragin' Cajuns. TCU can't imagine too thrilled to be playing UL Lafayette in a bowl game, so keep that in mind. We will also jump over a game that I will be at. I will be on the sidelines for the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl presented by Gin and Juice, Miami of Ohio, and Colorado State, 4:30 on CBS. CW, not
You'll
CBS.
be laid back on the sidelines with your mind on your money and your money on your mind.
Sure will. Thank you. Yes, that was well put there, Wes. All right, let's get to another game. Cam Ward is said to be playing against Iowa State. Numbers 3.5, Miami and Iowa State. Pop-Tarts Bowl, edible mascot and all. Are you looking at the dog here at Iowa State?
Yeah, I'm going with the Clones here simply because I don't know how long Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo, borderline first rounder. We know Cam Ward's probably a top 5, top 10 overall pick. Are they going to play the full game here? I think that begs the question. That's why the total for Miami game at 55 on the opener, now 56, is so low. Like, this would be hammer time on the over, but you don't know how long they're playing. I think Iowa State, Miami's still that brand name that Matt Campbell and them guys will get up for. So I do like the Clones.
Got a question. Why would Cam Ward even play in this game? And would he play the entire game? I kind of like West's side here with Iowa State, but the Clones got clowned so badly in that Big 12 championship game, I'm having a hard time getting past that.
All right,
I think Iowa State would be the play if I do play it, though.
Let's get to the Alamo Bowl. This will be the final one we'll hit on here. We'll have other time to hit on the remaining bowl games. This game's 7:30 on Saturday on ABC. 2 top 25 teams. According to all accounts and everything that Coach Prime has said, Shedor's going to be playing. Travis Hunter's going to be playing. I'll believe it when I see it. Not a lot of opt-outs on either side of this bowl game. I'm very excited for this. Yes, they're conference foes. They did not play each other this year. 4 is the number right now out there in the market right now, Matt.
Yeah, and I expect that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter will play in this game. And I think they've taken out insurance policies,
yes,
right? Pretty big insurance policies to allow these two to play in the bowl game. I just wonder if they're going. How much are they going to play? Wes and Tim, are they going to play a half? Are we going to even see them in the second half of this game? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to play in the Alamo Bowl. I know Dion has preached it and he's promised it, and I think that there's a great chance you're going to see these guys at least play the first half. But I don't know why they'd play the entire game. And by the way, BYU, I think, is more than capable of going toe-to-toe with Colorado anyway.
Sure.
And if you look at the Cougars, they don't have many opt-outs. They basically got their whole team here that's going to play in this bowl, and they're taking it seriously. I like BYU's chances to win the game. I'm taking a 4. I think the Cougars are one of my stronger bowl plays here.
Yeah, I took BYU as well, +4, just because of what you said. Sanders and Hunter, maybe they sit out in the second half. And BYU, I think, pretty motivated. This is actually a conference game in a bowl game now in the Big 12. And, I think Colorado, because of all the hype, teams get up for them. And I think Satake will have BYU up for this game. Very few opt-outs for the Cougars here. Want to finish off a pretty good season strong as they leaked a little oil at the end. So BYU for me in the Alamo Bowl.
All right, make it 3 of us. I'm in on BYU as well on the VSiN tailgate show on Saturday. I took 5, still would play 4. 4-1 this year are the Cougars as an underdog. So we will see. I have a lot of skepticism on how much Travis Hunter will be playing as the second half arises, Matt, you pointed out. All right, we'll keep it rolling. It is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. We'll get our best bet recap on the other side. It is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Notre Dame will.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
All right, one more segment to get to. We had so many bowls to hit on that we didn't have an opportunity to tie this thing up very nice and tidy. So appreciate all of you watching with us here on X, on YouTube as well, and all of our listeners on the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Joined by Wes Reynolds and Matt Humans. All right, let's get to it. Wyatt, do we have our lovely, beautiful graphic? Let's hit it to recap what we threw down as best bets.
Best bets recap.
All right, Mr. Humans, you, sir, are up first. Let's roll through your best bets.
I was a little bit distracted here to start this final segment. I was reading up on a Twitter feud that Tim Murray was involved in here during the broadcast.
I know, it's outrageous. I've been apparently gaslighting Notre Dame all year long, and now betting against them. I am apparently about to be crucified for that.
All right. I'm rolling with Oklahoma against Navy. 3, you can now lay 2.5 with the Sooners. Michael Hawkins is going to be the quarterback, and I'm okay with that. Superior athletes and speed. I'm going to go with the Sooners, laying less than a field goal there. BYU +4. We just talked about the Cougars. I think can go toe-to-toe with Colorado, even with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter playing. And I'm skeptical they're going to play the entire game. BYU +4. How about Michigan +12.5 against Alabama? And still some question marks about who's going to be on the field for the Tide. We think Jalen Milroe is going to be the quarterback, and I expect he probably will. Wolverines have several opt-outs as well. You might be able, I'm not going to bet this yet because you might be able to get 13 or maybe a little bit more on this number, so you don't have to rush to take 12.5. I am going to be on the Michigan side here with the Wolverines. I think still going to have plenty of talent they're going to put on the field in this bowl, and you got to wonder what's the motivation for the Crimson Tide. It kind of felt like Kalen DeBoer lost that team a little bit at the end of the season. And then the 2 playoff games, let's go with Boise +11 against Penn State. And again, I'm going to go Oregon Ducks against Ohio State. I'll see if I can get 3. If not, I'll split the unit, take half unit, 2.5, half on the money line. I had Oregon, the #1 team going into the playoff. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel, the most reliable quarterback. And I do think a bit of a location advantage on the West Coast at the Rose Bowl for the Ducks in Pasadena. I don't want to get carried away. I do think the Buckeyes are a dangerous team, but don't get carried away that they blew out a bad and unprepared Tennessee team in Columbus last weekend.
Wes, fire away, sir.
Yeah, a couple we already talked about. Vanderbilt +3 tomorrow against Georgia Tech in Birmingham. USC +4, BC +4. Iowa State, I know we didn't touch on this one as much. Is Restrepo also going to play?
I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah, exactly. And Cameron Ward, how long they're going to play.
Why is Cam Ward going to play in this game?
I would have no idea. I mean, unless they
is it part of his NIL agreement? That might be
That's what it might be. I think we saw that with the West Virginia-Memphis Bowl game in the Frisco Bowl. There was a star defensive tackle for WVU that played just the first half, and it's like, I'm done, because all they had to do was participate, not play the full game.
Right.
And he was out, so fulfilled that NIL obligation. BYU +4, we talked about. Louisiana Tech, I took 17 in the Independence Bowl. They, by the way, had to call that team back. Because, of course, that's the bowl Marshall was supposed to be down in Shreveport.
Yeah, went out for a Marshall ticket against my Army ticket against Marshall.
All that CLV going right in the trash can from our friend Dave Sherapan. But Louisiana Tech, look, I think maybe they're excited to play again. And Army, that's a big number. Of course, their star running back transfers. This is the new era.
Went to Arizona State.
Army running back going to Arizona State. So that's the new era. Iowa +3 in the Music City Bowl against Missouri. When in doubt, I'm going to take the better defense, and I know Johnson is out for Iowa, but the offense has been better this year. I tend to trust Kirk Ferentz in these bowl games. I think he'll have them ready.
How are we, real quickly, Wes, the total's 40, and Caleb Johnson being out, how How are we getting over 40 here in this one? Missouri and Iowa?
Maybe
no Luther Burden, of course, for Missouri as well.
Right, and the top couple receivers for Missouri have opted out. Burden, of course, probably going to be a first-rounder in the NFL draft. But
Wes, not making a counterpoint, but Kirk Ferentz didn't have his offense prepared for last year's
No,
bowl
he
game.
did not.
Remember that one?
But I think the talent gap a little bit more narrow than it was against Tennessee.
Nico's coming out party.
Yeah, Nico, they absolutely destroyed Iowa.
That game, by the way, on December 30th.
Yes.
That is the only bowl game on Monday, December 30th, the Music City Bowl. Don't want to go up against the NFL, baby. So one bowl game, that'll be Iowa and Missouri. Spread 3, you can get 3s. There is a 2.5 out there if you do like the favorite, total 40.
Also a couple more that I'll add here that we didn't get a chance to hit on. Texas Bowl, by the way, Baylor has now flipped to a favorite. I took +3. I would still like Baylor actually as the favorite here. A lot of attrition for LSU. Down the 2 top receivers, down 3 offensive line starters, down a tight end, down a few defensive starters. So Baylor or pass even at the current number, even if you missed the boat. Also, remember Dave Aranda. This probably has a little bit of something personal for him. He was the defensive coordinator with Coach O, and the associate head coach at LSU. Didn't get the job, goes and takes the Baylor job, and it looked like he was on the hot seat to start the year. I think Baylor's excited to play LSU. So Texas Bowl, Baylor for me, and then Citrus Bowl, I took Illinois +10. It might pop again against South Carolina. South Carolina's got a lot of opt-outs, and I think Illinois, very few opt-outs. They are very excited, I think, to play South Carolina.
A couple of totals I forgot to mention, and Wes is on one of them, too. It's not on his list there, I believe. Ohio State, Oregon, over 55, right? And Tim also put me down for Georgia ND, under 44.
All right, let's hit my best bet recap. Obviously, as I mentioned, we've been doing this for a while now, a couple of weeks. Take a look at some best bets for bowl games. Some lines have moved in our favor, some have not. So I'll run through mine. 2 current plays from this this podcast that lines are still available. Give me Vanderbilt +3. Wes hit on it. When in doubt, backing Diego Pavia. I think both these teams will be relatively motivated. Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt, 7-2 this year as a dog. He was banged up as the year went on. I think the month off is really going to help out Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. Not too many opt-outs to note here for Vanderbilt. Georgia Tech will be without a couple of guys. So that game is 3:30 on Friday. Give me Vanderbilt +3. And I mentioned Georgia. I think the Gunnar Stockton disdain, and maybe I'm talking him up too much when it comes to Gunnar Stockton. You know, the backup quarterback is always the favorite player in college towns across America, but I think Gunnar Stockton should be fine against this defense. I agree with Matt, what you said about the under in this one as well. I think the key for Notre Dame to win this game is Al Golden, as Mike Palm gives me eyes right now from over there. Yes, I'm betting Georgia, Mike. I'm on Georgia. Yes.
It's been hyping up Notre Dame the whole season. Now he's going to switch sides and take Georgia.
One point that you make, though, Tim, about Gunnar Stockton.
He's been there for 3 years.
He's playing for his job, too, next year, because Georgia is very active in the portal trying to get a quarterback. Did not get Fernando Mendoza. Wonder where he ended up.
See, we had to find a way. Somehow, in the 5th bonus segment, we found positivity regarding Indiana. Congratulations
last Friday
on
night,
Fernando Mendoza heading to
Somebody
Bloomington.
should have told Mendoza that Kurt Cignetti likes to use his punter, not his quarterback.
Do I have to get my towel back, my rally towel, and wave the white flag again?
All right, previous bets that I've got, UConn +4.5, BYU +5. I think the number's still playable at 4. Michigan +11.5, not the best number. I would agree with Matt, maybe wait and see where this ultimately goes. Michigan does have plenty of opt-outs. I'm curious about the motivation for Alabama. So this and UConn were some of my first bowl bets.
A rare revenge game, by the way, in the bowls.
Yeah, how about
Alabama lost in the Rose Bowl. So,
well, it's like when Michigan played Washington this year. This is the championship from a year ago.
Yes.
Like, really?
Yeah.
No one's on that roster still. Texas -11.5. I took the look-ahead line against Arizona State. And then Syracuse, obviously that number well gone. Probably would still look at Syracuse at 17. That is has the potential of being absolutely ugly. We'll have another podcast on Monday. Me and Adam Burke hoping to jump on. We'll get his thoughts on the college football playoff and any of their bowl games. Gentlemen, any other final thoughts as we get ready for the quarterfinal New Year's Eve and New Year's Day?
I hope we have an upset. Let's put it this way. In this round, I think we're going to have at least 2 really, really good games and probably 1 upset. We didn't get that in the first round. A lot of people were disappointed. But, Wes, I think we are going to have a stunner here in the second round.
Yeah.
At least we're going to have a couple really entertaining games.
Certainly wouldn't shock me, with the neutral site here and not the campus games. But a couple high-scoring games I think are in order in the Fiesta Bowl and in the Rose Bowl. I am still going to stick with who I have, Hook 'em Horns, as the national champion.
All right, that's going to do it for our podcast. For Matt Humans and Wes Reynolds, I'm Tim Murray. Thanks to Wyatt. Thanks to Ryan Hunter, everyone behind the scenes. This has been the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week here on VSiN.